As of patch 9.0 and the addition of Steve, we've seen a trend in character design that seems to be becoming the new standard. Sakurai and his team's approach has evolved over time, in a way that people tend to either love or loathe with a fiery passion. More and more, we see characters with not just their moveset to lean on, but also mechanics that exist outside of a traditional set of attacks. These gimmicks, or passive abilities, are more common than you'd expect. Even traits like extra jumps or tether recoveries fall under this umbrella. However, some passives really stand out against the rest of the roster. Some for their power, and others for their liability. I'm Glyphmoney, and today I'm breaking down the top 5 best and worst passive abilities in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Let's get started with one of the best, Bowser's Tough Guy. Bowser is already the heaviest character on the roster, and his power is likewise one of the most impressive. Still, being a super heavy has always come at a cost, that being that they are typically disastrously easy to combo. Bowser isn't immune to this weakness, but Tough Guy gives him a unique answer to many situations that other super heavies would be completely helpless against. Tough Guy also tanks through attacks much longer while Bowser is crouching, though this is rarely actually helpful, as any action other than shield will stand Bowser up, negating the extra armor. While it's not directly related to Tough Guy, it bears mentioning that Bowser also has percentage-based armor on his tilts and smash attacks, making him even more of a tank. Even though Tough Guy's effectiveness is based on knockback, many moves in the game have surprisingly high levels, which makes the list of moves this works on shorter than one would expect. Tough Guy also falls off as Bowser himself is damaged, making this passive much more relevant in the early game. While Tough Guy certainly destroys attacks like rapid jabs, it is completely useless against attacks with even moderate levels of base knockback, and grabs bypass this armor entirely. The beauty of Tough Guy is that it's entirely beneficial. It may not factor into every fight, but every time it does, it works in Bowser's favor, often in extremely tilting ways. But not every passive is strictly a benefit. Let's look at a very similar super heavy passive, King K. Rool's Belly Armor. In some regards, this armor surpasses Bowser's, as it can absorb attacks of any knockback. This makes Belly Armor a great get-out-of-jail-free card for otherwise lethal hits, and also exceedingly strong at trading through weaker attacks. However, this armor has a fatal flaw. Instead of being based on knockback, Belly Armor is HP based, meaning there's a hard limit to how much he can use it in a fight. While it is still beneficial to absorb hits with it, as it halves the damage done to K. Rool himself, exhausting that HP leads to the armor shattering and leaving K. Rool completely helpless. This makes Belly Armor a very risky option in matchups where his opponent can output high damage, as taking too big of a hit can mean losing access to not just the armor, but also the option of safely using the attacks the armor is attached to. Belly Armor does regenerate over time, but it takes up to an entire minute for it to fully recover. For as useful as Belly Armor is, the sheer lethality of having Belly Armor broken makes this one of the biggest liabilities in any character's kit. One of the oldest passive abilities in the game is also one of the strongest, that being Peach's and now Daisy's Float. This passive isn't a flashy ability, but the flexibility it brings is a huge part of what's made Peach into one of the strongest fighters in Ultimate. Float's most basic utility comes in its use for recovering, as Peach has a fairly underwhelming up B and double jump. Being able to float lets her recover high, going over potential edge guards, but that isn't its optimal use. Float is at its highest effectiveness when used to stall Peach's momentum while landing. Being able to come to a complete stop at any time makes her a nightmare to juggle, as any attempt to chase her can be dodged with little to no risk to herself. Defensive use of Float is strong, but aggressive Float is what makes this passive one of the best. Peach is able to lock her height while still moving horizontally, allowing her to pressure an opponent in ways no other character can match. There are two primary ways this sees play: Overhead Float and Grounded Float. Overhead allows Peach to pressure her opponent safely from a range that most characters simply don't have the tools to deal with, while still giving her the flexibility to safely retreat or extend her combo if she does connect a hit. Grounded Float is riskier, but also opens up one of the most devastating combo games available. Not only is she the only character who can leverage her aerial options at this height without jumping, she can also cancel her float to interrupt the in-lag with explosive results. These aerials aren't even limited by the short hop modifier usually applied to similar attacks, making this pressure even more effective. One would be hard-pressed to find a situation where Peach couldn't get use out of float, and not just from its flexibility, but also because there's no cost to using it. That said, not every passive is so generous with its use. Look no further than the ever-controversial Hero and his Mana passive. There's no question, Hero with Mana and Luck on his side is the most versatile character in Smash Bros. No other character even comes close to matching the level of options he has, many of which are so powerful that reliable access to them would make him far and away the strongest character in the game. And yet, Hero consistently comes up short when compared to other fighters on the roster. You see, all of this power comes at a price. While passives like Float can be used anytime, Hero is limited by his available mana pool. Yes, attacks like Kaboom put other projectiles to shame, but only while he has the resources available to actually cast it. Therein lies the problem. Mana can and will run out. While this isn't a death sentence, Hero without his massive catalog of tools becomes a much less formidable fighter, with a recovery that even Little Mac can look down on. Even though mana does regenerate passively, as well as much more relevantly while striking an opponent under their shield, that can be little consolation to a hero that's been starved of literally every recovery option. Now, this passive is a bit different from the others we've discussed so far, in that not one, but 3 characters have access to it. So tighten up those gloves and get ready for one of the most broken mechanics in Smash history, being from a traditional fighting game. While other passives are fairly one-dimensional, the Shotos, and Terry, have carried over a slew of unique traits from their home series. The first is quite straightforward, in that these fighters always face forward. Much like Float, this is a deceptively powerful tool. A big part of Smash is crossing up your opponent, causing them to overextend and leaving themselves open for a punish. However, these 3 are exponentially more difficult to mix up, as any attack that doesn't require holding forward or back will automatically correct the way they're facing. Beyond this, they've also carried over another staple of traditional fighting games: command inputs. While this doesn't usually offer them entirely new moves, it does significantly power up the specials they already have. But the most significant privilege given to these fighters is the ability to confirm weaker attacks into finishers. All of that increased power of their true input special attacks can be accessed safely and consistently out of much less committal options, effectively removing the risks normally associated with such powerful attacks. Turns out, hailing from a series specifically designed around competitive fighting is pretty damn OP. But being true to your source material is a double-edged sword. Consider Robin and the classic Fire Emblem weapon durability passive. Robin, when fully equipped, is a very strong fighter. Arc Fire is incredibly powerful at ledge and can string together insanely damaging or lethal combos off a single straight hit. Thunder and its charged variants offer a considerable deal of flexibility and ranged pressure, with base level Thunder providing Robin a great neutral tool, L Thunder as a kill option while their opponent is off stage, Arc Thunder functioning as another kill confirm option, and even Thoron has some niche use as a good finisher in some matchups. Robin even has access to Nosferatu, one of the only moves in the game to offer a substantial means of healing yourself, a mechanic so powerful that the vast majority of the other heals available only restore a negligible amount. That isn't even talking about the powerhouse that is Levin Sword, a weapon nearly rivaling Marth's Tippers without the need for precision spacing. But for as strong as these tools are, they're all burdened with a set number of uses. Levin Sword is very powerful, but Bronze Sword is underwhelming to say the least. As with most resource-based characters, these do recover over time, but Robin's weapons only start to regenerate after they've been fully expended. This means that their attacks are guaranteed to be an inconsistent option over the course of a fight, a liability even other resource-based characters usually don't have to concern themselves with. It's easy to get swept up in how strong these tools are while they're available, but if Robin happens to run out of the wrong tome at the wrong time, it can absolutely cripple their game plan. We're almost to the top now, so the power of this next passive should come as no surprise. I'm going to bend the rules here a little bit and combine 3 very similar passives into one for this, as all 3 have a good claim to this spot and operate off of similar mechanics. But enough build-up. The second strongest gimmick in Smash Ultimate is meter-based passives. Let's start with the universal parts. Meter passives are built up over the course of a battle, either by receiving or dealing out damage. The rates and means vary, but the end outcome is always a massive payoff. Joker summons Arsene, who adds a powerful secondary attack to nearly all of his moves. These hits are considerably more threatening, and paired with Joker's high base mobility, makes for one of the most formidable opponents in Smash. Cloud's limit functions a bit differently, in that his attacks all remain the same. Instead, Cloud sees a boost to his base attributes, becoming faster and more evasive in the air. He also gets a one-time upgrade on his specials, giving him access to some uniquely powerful finishers. Little Mac's KO punch is much harder to leverage, but also peerless when it comes to raw power. He may only get a single punch, but opponents with even light damage will find themselves down a stock if he can connect it. These payoffs are all tremendously powerful, but none of them come without notable problems. The most obvious being that any meter starts off empty and needs to be filled before it can be used. Cloud and Joker have means of accelerating theirs with their down specials, but poor Mac is forced to earn his KO punch the old-fashioned way. Even once their meter is online, these all still carry significant counterplay. Cloud's limit is bound by a timer, and when you only get a single chance to use his specials, it can make finding a suitable opening against a skilled opponent next to impossible before it runs out. Joker is likewise prone to having his power spike waited out, but Arsene's timer gets shortened even further every time Joker takes a hit. And again, poor Mac needs only to be put into tumble to cause him to lose KO punch entirely. Still, these downsides are heavily outweighed by the sheer power granted these characters while their meters are active. Games are often either won or lost based on how well their player can manage these trump cards, with poor use ending in a loss, and intelligent use making them nearly unbeatable. But there's more than one way to get a power spike in Ultimate, and not all of them are so inevitable. Let's dig into the newest and one of the most complex passives Smash has ever seen, Steve's mine and crafting abilities. Steve has the unique ability to pull resources from the map itself, giving him access to stronger attacks, better recovery, extended combos, and likely even more that we still haven't found in these early days of his meta. Steve, once he gets a full inventory, can hit with the strongest of the roster, with diamond weapons putting him on par with super heavies like Bowser for kill power, and redstone boosted minecarts becoming a safer version of Flare Blitz that also has a command grab attached to the end. But that's the upside of this passive. Steve is a force to be reckoned with when he's kitted out, but a resource-starved Steve is nearly defenseless. This is where this passive turns into one of the most volatile we've ever seen. Steve can snowball a bit of momentum into devastating pressure that lasts him the whole game, or he can find himself under so much pressure that he never even manages to get the basics online. Steve finds himself in particular trouble against characters with enough speed to rush him down, or enough ranged pressure to keep him from picking up new materials. Even getting these materials may not be enough if his opponent can keep him away from his crafting table, though being able to summon it to himself and the short time frame needed to craft usually means he'll be able to squeeze it in even against tons of pressure. These weapons come with an expiration date of their own, meaning even successfully making them can amount to little if your opponent outlives their durability. Steve's kit doesn't have one flaw, it has layers of flaws. Good materials are hard to get, require even more time to actually craft, and even then only grant a temporary power-up. We may find over time that Steve's strengths outweigh the variance that comes inherently with these passives, but looking at how similar gimmicks have worked out in the past, I believe he's got a very uphill battle in front of him. Before I get to the best and worst passives in the game, let's take a look at a few of the notable examples that barely missed the cut. Bat Within gives Bayonetta the best frame data available on dodges, escaping otherwise true combos with only a slight bit of damage for the trouble. These dodges may technically be punishable, but Bayo's incredible advantage state paired with this powerful boost to her disadvantage makes for a very challenging matchup to manage. Another melee classic, all of Marth's sword attacks have a special hitbox in the very end of his blade that does tremendous levels of knockback. While this is broken on paper, the spacing and execution of hitting tippers with consistency has proven to be less feasible in actual gameplay. Hero smash attacks are already decently strong, but they all have a chance to crit, making them some of the most absurdly powerful smashes ever seen. In typical hero fashion, this is held back by a lack of consistency, but when they do connect, they can end stocks faster than any character has any business doing. The once top tier from Smash 4 has fallen greatly. Luma is still a pretty strong boost to Rosalina herself, functioning like a mini Arsene that's active much more often, and can control space the player isn't actually in. However, Luma comes with a much more exploitable weakness. Luma does not recover from tumble, so attacking it in a way that knocks it off stage will kill it regardless of how damaged it is. Rosa's shield does not protect Luma either, meaning aggression will leave her fighting solo more often than not. While Bowser Jr. does indeed take less damage when attacks at the clown car itself, that does not at all make up for the fact that he takes bonus damage to the hits to his actual body. This may sound like a fair exchange, but it is much more common for Bowser Jr. to see aggression coming from above than below. He may take a little less damage from being juggled, but it's hard to discount the extra damage he takes from those mini hits that do connect from above. While not a passive per se, this unique trait still bears mentioning. Having your shield broken is often a death sentence, but not 100% of the time. If you're at a low enough percent or against an opponent without a strong enough attack, you can survive. Not to mention there is always a small chance of your opponent botching their execution. For Jigs though, there is no such hope. A broken shield means death without question, barring being on a stage with a ceiling, which no competitively viable stage offers. Now, this brings us to the absolute most powerful passive in all of Smash Bros. A mechanic that, if added to any character, would instantly boost them to peerless levels of strength. The number one ability in Smash Ultimate is Lucario's Aura. Now, every character in the game has a mild version of this ability in the Rage mechanic. As your own damage grows, your knockback gets a corresponding boost, rewarding players who can hold on to stocks at high percentages. But Aura takes that mechanic and puts it into maximum overdrive. A Lucario at low percents is barely a threat, but a Lucario with max Aura is arguably the strongest character in the entire game. With nearly double damage on his attacks, maxed out Lucario can close out stocks at percentages even Ganon mains would blush at. Max Aura is not typically something a Lucario will live to see, as he's fairly lightweight and slow enough to catch out, but even a moderately powered up Lucario represents the potential for a massive swing in momentum. Aura isn't only boosted by damage, it gains even more power from being down in stocks as well. The most insane part of Aura is the fact that it rewards Lucario for losing. Somehow, getting hit is a good thing for Lucario, as every bit of damage only makes him that much more powerful. But Aura does more than just boost Lucario's strength. His specials scale with it in even more relevant ways. Aura Sphere becomes obscenely large, to the point where it can catch opponents hanging on the ledge with ease. His up B covers more distance for recovery and surprise kills from across the stage, and his side B's hitbox turns into a massive tool for spacing opponents, or even closing out stocks. Lucario's kit is very much tuned around Aura, and not in his favor. Lucario suffers from being very high risk, low reward, as getting into the deep end of Aura requires him to be on death's door. And without Aura, he can really struggle outside of having an above average combo game. That said, don't let Lucario's weakness take away from how busted Aura itself actually is. Even characters like Joker would gladly trade away Arsene for this, as Aura is a tool that comes with consistency. Outside of some very fringe situations, almost all stocks last until at least about 100%. And at that point, Aura is effectively an Arsene that only goes away if they can kill you. Aura can take a lost game and turn that deficit into momentum for yourself, swinging back games that you'd otherwise have absolutely no chance of winning. Let's wrap this up with one that no one will be shocked by. Pichu and his cruel joke of a passive that is Electric Recoil. Pichu is an incredibly interesting character design, being not only the lightest character by a quite considerable margin, but also the sole character to have a kit built around gaining extra power in exchange for damaging themselves. Recoil damage does exist in other characters' kits, but never in such a central role as it does for Pichu. But this passive doesn't come without an upside. Pichu's kill power is among the most potent, and his damage output compared to this recoil is hugely in his favor. However, that is conditional on him actually landing these attacks. Every time Pichu pushes one of these buttons and doesn't connect that attack, that isn't just a whiff, that's a small punish in their opponent's favor. That may not matter on a small scale, but Pichu can amass quite a bit of damage on himself without his opponent ever actually landing a hit. Considering Pichu has the potential to be killed at lower percents than Jigglypuff, well, you can imagine how detrimental this can be. Even if Pichu lives to 100%, Electric Recoil can easily do 20% or more of that on its own. Pichu's incredibly tiny frame and high mobility goes a long way in keeping this character from getting blown up, but you can't discount the fact that Pichu is the only character who could be losing neutral despite their opponent not being in advantage state. This all comes together to make for a very polarized character, where you either steamroll an opponent or get blown out of the water. This is the only passive in the game that is strictly detrimental. Every single other passive with a downside comes with extra utility to match that, but Pichu's kill power just isn't high enough to justify this cost. So, that's my list of the best and worst gimmicks in Smash Ultimate. And I gotta say, I love how these have changed Smash. The whole point of representing such a broad variety of games isn't just to put their character onto the roster, it's to try and bring some of the spirit of their source material along with them. Letting those lines be blurred allows for Smash to be a true nexus of gaming. Smash is a platform fighter first, but it also carries a vein of spectacle fighter, or survival mode, or strategy game, or hell, even a traditional fighting game within it. There's so much depth to explore within these gimmicks, and personally, I can't wait to see what else it has to offer in the future. Thanks for watching, and it's been Glyphmoney.